one of the biggest nightmares of my life has happened. Well, I don't even know how to start. I live alone, I'm 21 years old, and I live in a low-income apartment because I'm in college and the money doesn't allow me to buy a newer one. It all started when I was in my normal routine. I woke up, made coffee for myself, and went to work. That week I had left earlier because there was a power outage at work. I left at 3 p.m., took my bus, and got ready to go straight to college. It's a bit far from where I lived, so it was always a challenge to take a crowded bus every day. I was lucky this time since the bus was almost empty. Everything went normally. I had my classes, went to a friend's house, and went home. Up to that point, everything was normal. Until I came back by Uber. I'm too scared to take the bus late at night. I arrived at my apartment, entered my building, and saw a man sitting in front of some apartments. I had never seen him there before, but I let it go because he could be a relative of a resident. I went inside. In my apartment, I was watching TV as usual, and it was around 11 p.m. I was going to sleep when I heard a very loud noise coming from outside the apartment. I was in shock, because it sounded like a door slamming. I even saw my door slightly open. At that moment my soul left my body. I didn't think twice, and called my friend who lived about 2 blocks above me. He came, but we didn't see anything. We looked in all the rooms of my apartment, and there were no traces, until we decided to check the building's security camera. We spoke to the security guard, and he said he would inform the supervisor about it. Then we saw on the camera the same man I saw earlier, trying to open my apartment door. He succeeded, but when he was entering, someone probably heard him. He ran to the building's exit. Well, at that point, everyone in the building already knew. The police searched the entire building and asked almost everyone if they knew that guy from the video. Absolutely no one knew that guy. Then I asked how the security guard didn't see that guy enter the building. He said that so many people passed by at that time. I even forgot his face. And remember, it was a low-income apartment, so I had no hope from the security guard. So I kind of left it to the police to see if they could find anything out. To this day, nobody knows who he is. I always try to talk to the police to see if they found anything out. They always say they are still looking, but nothing. I really think this guy followed me on some day of my crazy routine and waited for the moment to do something that miraculously didn't happen. Did you like it? Wait for the next story. I'm a female in my 50s now, so grew up predominantly in the 1980s. Living in Sydney, I had mum, dad, and my 2 younger sisters. On the occasions my parents decided to go out, we had family to look after us. By the time I was 12, my parents decided they would trust me to finally babysit my sisters. This story occurred on the very first time I babysat. My parents had decided to go out for movies and dinner on a Saturday night. They had found a midnight screening of one of their favorite movies from their childhood, so knew they wouldn't be home till 2 a.m. At around 11 p.m., we were still staying up late together, lights all off, watching TV, when we heard somewhat of a rustling in our front yard. Easily putting it down to wind or a cat, I didn't worry too much. But then about 2 minutes later, bang bang on our front door, way louder than a normal friendly visitor. The 3 of us were terrified. We became a bit more collected but still silent and turned the TV off. Even in the 80s, there was no way in hell I was going to open the door to anyone, especially that late at night, and knew it wasn't our folks. Bang bang another time. As the door, I decided to brave it a little, to the front door. Fortunately, the door was almost completely wooden, with just some thin strips of heavily colored and frosted glass panels, so no one outside could see in. So we kind of crouched there and barely made out a figure at the door. Before we knew it, the doorknob was rattling. This person was trying to enter the house. Not knowing if they knew we were home, and too scared to make it obvious, I had to do something. Luckily, we had a wooden doorstop. I quickly grabbed it and tried to quietly jam it under the door, so that it hopefully couldn't be opened. Our only phone was right at the front door as well, so was too scared to use it if they heard. So I ushered my sisters upstairs to my parents' room, where we just huddled. I knew we could see the front stoop from our parents' window, but it didn't have blinds, just heavy curtains. But I couldn't resist not looking. My sisters, of course, feeling the same. We ended up slowly putting our heads under the curtains, so we didn't have to pull them open, and looked out the front. What happened next has fueled our nightmares for life. We saw this old man. His eyes were dead focused right on us, from the second we looked out, like he knew exactly where we were, in the house, waiting to catch our gaze. He had the most menacing, scowling face. We saw he was holding something, a brown paper bag. He held it by the top, making it obvious that something was inside, and slowly lifted it up to beside his head. He then lifted up his other arm with a finger pointed at the bag, and very slowly moving his forearm back and forth, creepily gesturing to whatever was in the bag. That whole thing lasted all of 5 seconds, before we all ducked our heads back down, recoiling in fear. I stood up about a minute later, and moved to the very edge of the window, praying I may see more without him seeing me through the chink of the side of the curtain. I could just see, and he was gone. My sisters and I just huddled together, scared for ages, on the floor of the bedroom. And I don't remember much else, just our parents coming home, and us in hysterics telling them, think my dad made a police report, but that was about it. He was never seen by us again. I have and will forever be desperate to know who that man was, what he wanted with us, and what the hell was in that paper bag. But still, creepy old man, I'm glad we didn't meet again. Did you find this story scary? The next one will give you chills. Creepy backyard man. Back in late 2023, I began seeing a man in my neighborhood walking his dog. I would see him in the morning when I went to work, maybe 2 or 3 times a week. He an average-looking guy, maybe in his 60s. I would see him again regularly when I came home. Since I worked an 8 to 5, I didn't think much of it, just assumed we had similar schedules. He always wore the same blue jacket. Didn't think much of it, because it looked like a rain or wind jacket, so I thought it was just what he threw on to walk the dog. He would stare a lot when he walked by, but again, assumed maybe he was a lonely guy and didn't think too much of it. One day I asked him if he got the end-of-year letter from the HOA, and he seemed confused. I repeated myself, and he said he hadn't received anything yet. Wrote this off as well because I assumed he was caught off guard. I had been seeing him daily for months, but we never spoke. He genuinely seemed shocked by me speaking to him. I told him to keep a lookout for it, and he just stared and went back to walking his golden retriever. I began seeing him even more after this. By Christmas I was seeing him at least once a day, if not twice. I treated him like every other neighbor, and did a quick neighbor wave when I saw him walking his dog. In March I separated from my husband. He moved out and took the dog. He owned him before I came along, so I understood. Since I was now alone and sad, my mom stayed with me a while. She doesn't work, so she would be at my house during the day while I was gone. She noted the same guy always walking by. She noticed he always stared too, and it was kind of odd. She waved hello to him a few times, but he never did anything but stare and walk his dog. She said since he walked the dog often, but also seemingly on a schedule, he could have early onset dementia, or maybe sick somehow, and using the dog walks as a way to get exercise. We agreed he was very odd, but harmless. After a month or so, my mom went back to her house, and I was living alone. One thing I loved about that house was the fact that the backyard butted up to a national park. Beyond my fence was trees and forest. After my husband and dog left, I would be sitting in the backyard and hear what sounded like footsteps. It was almost always late at night when I'd be sneaking out for a late-night cig before bed. I was drinking a good amount at the time, so I figured 1, I was paranoid, 2, I was probably hearing raccoons or opossums in the woods, and 3, having the dog before would have scared off any critters. It didn't happen every night, far enough apart that I was able to write it off, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. My fence had horizontal planks rather than your more standard vertical style. There were gaps you could see through if you were right on it. I looked over the fence in the daylight for a sign of anyone back there. The national forest kept fire break cleared between the edge of the park and the back of homeowners' property, so it was difficult to tell if anyone had been there or not. I started noticing lighters and cigarettes missing from the backyard. I would swear I had an almost full pack going to bed, but when I checked the next day it would be half empty. I wrote this all off due to my heavy drinking. My cousins started coming over and helping me do some handiwork around the house on the weekends. The neighbor guy in the blue coat would walk his dog every day still. He would now stop and watch my cousins from the sidewalk as they did work at the house. He would let the leash out for the dog to come up to them, but they didn't pet it because it smelled awful. I told them the theory my mom said, that he was sick and weird and harmless. They didn't agree, and the next time he let the dog into the driveway, my cousins told him to fuck off. From what they told me, he just stared at them for a while, then walked off. From then, the man would still stare, but it was even creepier. When I would drive by, he would stop and watch me, as in physically turn his body to follow my car as I went by. I would wave as if it were any other neighbor, as I always did, and he didn't flinch. Around June, a friend of mine moved in. She was going through a divorce as well, and I was happy to have someone to hang out with after work. We had a lot of fun drinking and burning fires in the fire pit. And it began again, the sound of footsteps in the woods. We were both drunk, so we ran inside and laughed it off. This happened a handful of times over the next few months. I would hear things more often when I was alone. My roommate split her time, so she was never with me on the weekend. She had noted the creepy guy with his dog. He seemed to be walking his dog when I left for work around 7:30, and again when she was leaving for work around 8:30. He would let his dog out to her daily, and she would pet the dog at first. She stopped because the dog smelled so bad, and the man never spoke. He just stared. She started being creeped out too. She said he seemed friendly enough until she stopped petting his dog, and his stares shifted to being mean too. He began stopping to watch her drive by as well. Then one day I saw it. I saw him down out past the entrance of the neighborhood, and at the tree line to the forest. He was clearly walking into the woods. That's when it clicked. Why he wore the same clothes every day. Why he seemed to be there with his dog every day we left the house. Why they smelled so bad. Why I was hearing things in the woods. I almost began to panic. Surely a man isn't living in the woods watching me. Surely this man hasn't been watching me through my fence for almost a year at this point. The whole time this was happening, the house next door was empty. It was a rental, and the previous tenants left, and it sat. I started thinking back, and I began seeing the man sometime after the previous tenants moved out. I tried best not to panic, and started looking into trail cameras to film behind my fence. I told my roommate about my theory, and she said I sounded crazy at first. She jokingly started yelling out for him to go away and leave us alone. Then we literally started hearing footsteps in the woods at that moment and ran inside. Before I could even order a camera, they rented the house next door. It was just days after I told my roommate what I thought was going on. A family with a dog and 2 kids moved in. The last time I saw the man walking his dog was the morning the family moved in, because I came home from work to see the moving truck. When I introduced myself to the new neighbors, I asked about the woods behind the house. They didn't have a fence. I asked if they found anything back there, and they said they did, but it was just random junk they threw out. I didn't say anything more. I contemplated telling them, but figured I would sound insane. I believe this man was living behind their house and watching me through my fence. I never had cameras in the backyard, so I can't say for certain if he ever crossed the fence. Since I never saw him again, I decided his cover was blown and he moved on to watch other people. I stayed in that home until October 2025. Literally never saw the guy ever again after that day. This gave me chills, but let's move to the next story. About 5 years ago, me and my family moved house. We only moved a couple of streets away from our previous house. Our new home was nice, but a bit of a fixer-upper. It needed a lot of work, and it didn't have a burglar alarm, which was weird. Anyway, the very first night we have in the house, we are all asleep upstairs. It's me and my wife in our room, my daughter in her room, and my son in his. I get woken up by something walking into our room. It's my 4-year-old son, rubbing his eyes and saying he has been woken by banging noises. I tell him to get into our bed. The bed is too small for me to now fit in as well, so I swap beds with him. I lie down in his bed, and after a few seconds, I hear the same banging noises that he had mentioned. I wasn't sure what it was, so I went to check. I walked out of my son's bedroom to go take the stairs down. At the top of the stairs is a window that if you look out and look down, you can see the side of our house, and beneath that window is a back door that goes straight into our kitchen. I look out to see if I can see anything that might be causing the noise, and that's when I see it. There are about 4 or 5 men stood, casually dressed in ski masks and big coats, all standing outside the side door. They have the lights of their phones all shining on our door. And one guy at the front of the group is yanking the door handle off the door, trying to break in. It takes me a second to comprehend what I'm looking at and realize this isn't a dream. I don't know why I did this next thing, but this is how I handled it. I casually opened the window, poked my head out, and I looked down at the 4 or 5 men trying to break in and said, "Excuse me, guys, Could you fuck off, please? I didn't even say it in an angry voice. I was quite calm. But the other weird thing was they just all immediately turned about and just walked off, as if they had been waiting for a train and had just heard an announcement that the train was canceled, and they just wandered away looking for alternative forms of transport. There was no urgency, no scrambling away. We rang the police straight away. We didn't sleep at all that night. It freaked us out because this was the first day in our new home. I have to admit I hated the house after that. I didn't feel safe and wanted to move back into our old home. The next day the police came, and we got a burglar alarm and added new locks on the doors and a spotlight outside for the door. We found out that a gang had been going around and robbed a bunch of other houses nearby that same night. We checked the damage and the door handle was hanging on by a thread. They were probably seconds away from getting in. It still freaks me out that if my son hadn't woken me up, I wouldn't have slept in his bed, and I wouldn't have heard the banging, and I wouldn't have seen them outside my door and stopped them just in time. It's weird as well that they responded to me calmly telling them to fuck off. A few months later, we found a bag of drugs in a random drawer in my daughter's bedroom in that same house. Weird. This next one gets wild. Creepy Dollar Tree man. Here in the States we have a dollar store called Dollar Tree. My daughter used to love going in and just looking around. We went in one afternoon in about 2006. We were just looking around and enjoying our time together in leisure. At that time she was about 10 years old, so I'd allow her to look at things she wanted on one aisle, as I looked around at items on the end cap of that aisle, or I'd be on directly the next aisle. Every few minutes I'd go onto the aisle and check on her, and see if she wanted to move on to something else. Suddenly, I noticed a tall man, just kind of hanging around where we were browsing, and he didn't seem to be looking at anything in particular, and honestly not looking at anything at all. It was more like he was just waiting for something, and it just kind of set my senses off, gave me a strange vibe. So I went directly to where my daughter was, and stayed directly next to her with my hand firmly on her. She could tell something was off, looked at me quizzically, but didn't verbally question me. I tried changing aisles but staying in the same area, but within seconds, he would be right next to us on the new aisle. I quietly told my daughter to please not ask questions, but to please follow me no matter what I did or where I went. Surprisingly, she did so because ordinarily she was full of questions about literally everything. She's got ASD and just likes to get info on whatever is happening. I decided I would cross the store to a far corner in the opposite direction, and you guessed it, within a minute he was right behind us. I immediately went to another far-off part of the store. Same thing, within a minute he was right behind us. I did this about 4 to 5 different times, and each time he ended up where we were. The stationery, the grocery area, the makeup aisle, etc. I was very nervous, but I was young and I thought about telling an employee, but decided I didn't want to cause a scene. Again, I was a young mom. At some point, I told my daughter the basics of what was going on and told her to understand no circumstances leave my side or let go of me. I was so freaked out, I just decided we'd check out and come back another day. Well, as soon as we got in line to check out, the man got in line at the register next to me, and it seemed as though it was because that line had roughly the same amount of people, and perhaps he wanted to leave the store as we were leaving. The second we finished checking out, he headed straight for the door. I told my daughter to take my hand and to not let go no matter what, and again she did exactly what I said without question. I told her when we get to the car, immediately get and lock your door while I get in. She did so. I chanced to look back, and yes, this man was coming right behind us, but far enough away that as we were walking very quickly, we had time to get in the car without him catching up. We lived right down the street from the store, but I took a very scenic route home to make sure I wasn't being followed. I don't know what his intentions were, but it felt sinister, whether it was or not. To this day, my daughter brings this story up every now and then, and it's been almost 20 years since it happened, and I still get sick to my stomach when I think about it. Whatever he actually wanted, I hope to never be in this situation again. So, creepy Dollar Tree man, let's not meet again. And now moving to the next one. Grindr date. It's a long story, but please, don't friend-zone me too just because I'm long-winded. I'm in the Netherlands on a work trip, and in the evening I find myself alone in a hotel with nothing to do. Like any self-respecting gay man, Reading or watching TV seem like pretty unedifying pastimes when you've got free time. So, why not compulsively throw myself onto Grindr for hours and maybe risk my life meeting some weirdo? I start chatting with this cute, nice young guy. Really, really hot. He lives fairly far from my hotel, so we decide to meet halfway to get to know each other. 5 kilometers on foot, which I happily do because I like walking around new cities. Not knowing the local geography, I imagine pubs and bars, and instead I find myself in a rather lonely, gloomy part of town. We meet, and he's much better looking than in the photos, but if on chat he was friendly and nice, in person he's pretty reserved and unsociable, which I chalk up to Dutch stiffness. I talk to him and he replies in monosyllables with no engagement whatsoever. The emotional and physical affective deprivation my parents raised me with has produced me, an insecure egocentric who has to be liked by the other person at any cost. If he likes me, my unconscious suggests I'll heal my narcissistic wound and finally be worthy of my mom's love. I perform my personal mating dance. He's sufficiently smitten. Out of nowhere, he invites me to his place and I accept. We get to his place, another 5 kilometers away, right in the countryside, and my phone stops getting a signal. I don't know if it's lack of coverage or if I ran out of credit. The house is nothing like I imagined. It looks more like the house of an old lady who collects doilies. He tells me the villa we're in was inherited from his grandmother, and he's been living there alone for several years. He shows me what he's cooking in the kitchen. A nauseating, watery stew that I hope he won't offer me. He takes me into the living room. We sit on the couch, and he loosens up a bit. Between one chat and another, he tells me he's a fashion designer, and that he produces the fabrics he uses himself with the help of a 3D printer, a super innovative technique. I tell him I know a Dutch designer who uses the same technique. Her name is Iris van Herpen. Pause. He starts foaming at the mouth. He begins telling me that this very Van Herpen stole his ideas and he wants to sue her. He pulls out DVDs of his fashion shows and comments on every single piece, meanwhile showing me YouTube videos of the established designer's shows with the supposed copies of his work. If Van Herpen's models look like ethereal, graceful works of art walking down the runway, his models wearing his creations look like runaway girls on their third walk of shame of the week. I don't tell him this, and on the contrary I nod along sympathetically to his megalomaniac statements. As I resign myself to the idea that nothing's going to happen, he kisses me. One of the worst kisses of my life, surely a harbinger of far worse performances. I try to guide him and improve things, but nothing. He just can't do it, like your grandpa when you try to teach him how to use email. He stops and tells me he'll be right back. He goes upstairs to the second floor. 10 minutes go by and he's still nowhere to be seen. I approach and shout, "Everything okay?" "Yes, yes," he says. Could it be that he wants me to go upstairs and I'll find him naked, bent over? I ask him, should I come up? And he says, No, wait. I wait. Another 20 minutes pass. Is he taking a shower? Yet, I don't hear any water running. After a while, much darker possible scenarios start to crowd in. Ones anyone with a bit of common sense would think of if they found themselves in an isolated stranger's house. Is he putting on a raincoat to protect himself from the blood once he chops me up? Is he sharpening an awl with which to carve red rum into my belly after chaining me to the fireplace? I decide to make a run for it. If the idea of being murdered by a stranger has just barely surfaced, the doubt turns into certainty when I realize that the door we came in through is locked. Oh my God, I'm going to die. I go to the kitchen where there's another door, and that one is locked too. Oh crap. I go back to the living room, and meanwhile scan the place for possible escape routes. In a dramatic flash forward, I picture myself throwing an armchair through a window, and then jumping out and running away, or finding a flashlight in the bookcase to send Morse code distress signals. After about 50 minutes, he comes back downstairs, impassive. "I want to fuck you," he adds without any emotion. I've completely lost the desire. I'm genuinely convinced he's going to kill me. I tell him I have to go home and that it's late. He replies that I can't go home now. He wants to fuck. I tell him he took too long and that I have to go back to my hotel, which is 10 kilometers away, and it's pitch dark by now. He sighs. I ask him to let me connect to his Wi-Fi since my phone has no signal, so I can follow the route on Google Maps. He points to a modem blinking under a chair. The password is underneath. I crouch down to look for the password on the sticker on the back of the modem. After a few seconds, I realize I'm bent over with him behind me. While trying to type the password, I keep glancing at him as he watches me slyly from the couch. My hands are shaking. At a certain point, I see him lean forward from the couch to grab something behind a piece of furniture. An object I can't see and that I decide must be a weapon to knock me out. I jump up, grab a lamp, and brandishing it, tell him, "Let me out of here." He looks at me, surprised. "If you want to go out, go." "I can't," I tell him. "The door is locked." He looks astonished at this statement. "Follow me," he says. I'm now certain I'm going to die. I keep the lamp with me. He looks at me impassively, as if this were perfectly normal. I follow him and we go into the kitchen, where the nauseating stew reigns supreme, and he tells me the keys are there. The light in the room is off. He walks in without turning it on and opens a drawer, and I clearly hear the clinking of cutlery. Oh my God, he wants to attack me with a kitchen knife. I suddenly turn on the light and keep brandishing the lamp. He looks at me coldly and takes the keys from the cutlery drawer. We head toward the door, and as soon as I'm outside, I run like hell, with the lamp in my hand. It takes me 2 hours to get back to the hotel. As soon as I enter my room, I open my laptop, and since his first and last name were visible in the fashion show he tortured me with, I block him on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, etc. Years later, this encounter unsettles me so much that every now and then I Google city name plus fashion designer plus killer, sure that sooner or later he'll kill someone. I'm left with 2 questions. What did he do alone on the 2nd floor for 50 minutes? Was he actually preparing the post-coital crime scene? Did he take Viagra and wait for it to kick in? Was the grandmother not dead and did he knock her out with chloroform? What was he trying to grab from behind the piece of furniture? A portable Wi-Fi hotspot for my dead phone? A dildo? Let's not meet again, Grindr date. What did you guys think? Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. See you next time.